The Sandman universe is filled with many wonders, but also with many beings who wish to do you or others within harm. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight. Join me today as we count down the top 10 horrifying villains in the Sandman universe. Number 10. Mr. Nimrod. Mr. Nimrod is the main organizer of the cereal convention, which is disguised as being about breakfast food, but is really for serial killers to meet and discuss the tricks of their trade and their work with one another. Mr. Nimrod is referred to by the Corinthian as a hunter, and when an outsider and fan, Philip Sitz, manages to sneak into the convention, and the Corinthian, Mr. Nimrod, and the Doctor decide to take turns tormenting Philip, Corinthian also explains that Mr. Nimrod can bone, joint, and gut any animal in minutes, which gives you a sense for what kind of experience Mr. Sitz is going to have in store. Nimrod is also terrifying in the regard that outwardly he presents as neat, ordinary, and mild-mannered, but in reality he is a ruthless, angry, and violent killer, like many of the serial killers at the convention. Number 9. Thessaly. I don't know if we can specifically call Thessaly a villain in the comics, but she definitely does a lot of suspicious and dubious things, especially in regards to Dream. This is because she and Dream had a relationship, and she is still hurt from the ending of that relationship. Thessaly initially presents as your average, somewhat kinda hippie-esque looking human, but in reality is an extremely old and powerful witch. Even Dream is surprised to see she's still alive and she's looking so young. Thessaly helps Barbie to escape her own dream realm and helps to defeat the villainous Cuckoo, but she also aids Lyta, helping to protect her when Lyta herself goes up against Dream. So while sometimes more heroic or neutral, she is also an antagonist in the series at times, and a well-written and complex one at that. And friends, before we move on to the next spot on this list, if you are loving it, be sure to hit that like and comment down below if you want some more Sandman content for us. I have read all of the original series, and I am so here to give you as much Sandman content as you want, because I could talk about Sandman all day. Number 8. The Corinthian. You might think of the Corinthian as one of the Sandman's major villains, and in a way, he is. Though he more serves the role of antagonist, I'd say, than villain specifically. The Corinthian was made by Dream to be his nightmare, to serve as a dark reflection to humanity of all the things they refuse to face about themselves and their nature. And yet even still, the Corinthian longed so much to be among the living that he was pulled to Earth and chose to live there during the years of Dream's imprisonment. The Corinthian claims that he preys on his victims and devours their eyes with his two smaller mouths in the place of eyes that he hides behind sunglasses to get a feeling for what it's like to be human, to truly be alive with your own sense of purpose, as opposed to being a dream or a nightmare shaped by Lord Morpheus and given a purpose by him. The Corinthian has more than one iteration as well, and later on actually does become a loyal ally to Dream, although he does still remain an antagonist to Dream's Raven Matthew, who he threatens to kill on multiple occasions. Number 7. Erasmus Fry and Richard Madoc. Erasmus Fry and Richard Madoc were both writers who were just people, but villains all the same for sure. As Dream once warned Hobb, it is not a good thing to be in the business of enslaving others and taking away their freedom of choice, which is just what these two men did. Erasmus Fry captured Calliope, using her for inspiration to write. When he retired, he passed Calliope, who's one of the muses, on to Richard Madoc, a struggling writer who assaulted her in order to gain enough inspiration to write great works. Both of these men actually assaulted Calliope. Calliope was once the lover of Dream, and after observing what it was like to live as a prisoner himself in the glass chamber in Roderick Burgess's basement, he eventually answers her call and helps to set her free. Erasmus and Richard might not be your typical comic book villains, but they both did horrible things and are villains nonetheless in my mind. Number 6. Funland. Funland is another one of the serial killers, or collectors as they prefer to be called in public, who attend the serial convention. In the live-action series, he is one of the small group including Mr. Nimrod and the Doctor who come up with the idea to lure the Corinthian to their convention by copying his method of killing. Funland seems to enjoy preying on younger folks, and while at the diner where the killers come up with the plan to lure in the Corinthian, even seems to be interested in killing their waiter, who he claims looks younger to him than perhaps he actually is. The Doctor, however, asserts that the waiter is definitely too old for Funland. Funland in the comics, instead of preying on Jed, preys on Rose Walker, who is saved instead in that version of the tale by Lord Morpheus. Number 5. Loki. Loki and Thor, both being a part of Norse mythology, as well as Odin, also exist in the DC universe, although the DC version of the characters is quite different from the Marvel versions, and here they're more sort of traditionally presented, I would say. Loki, being a trickster, enjoys messing with Dream, or at least attempting to anyway, and at one point his vendetta against the Dream Lord Lord becomes quite personal. Loki does a ton of vile things in the comics. He burns one of Rose's close friends alive, reducing her to crispy ashes. He also is the one to kidnap Lyta's baby, Daniel, setting in motion events that lead to the downfall of Lord Morpheus. Number 4. Lyta Hall. Hippolyta Hall, or Lyta Hall as she is known in the live-action series, was a friend of Rose Walker's. In the comics, Rose was actually someone who lived in the same apartment building and was sometimes babysitter for Lyta's baby, Daniel. In the live-action Sandman series though, Lyta is introduced as the attorney of Rose Walker, who also acts as a friend to Rose, escorting her on her trip to London and later helping her when Rose is searching for her lost brother Jed. In the comics, however, Lyta also has it out for Dream, who she blames when her son Daniel goes missing. The reason why Lyta is blaming Dream when Daniel goes missing is because Daniel was born and possibly conceived in the dream realm where Lyta was trapped for many years with her husband Hector in the comics. Dream claims that Daniel belongs to the dreaming and will eventually have to return there, but Lyta refuses to accept this and actually sees Dream's promise as a threat. She ends up allying herself with extremely powerful forces in an effort to destroy Dream later on when presented with an opportunity to do so. In the end though, Lyta not only hurts Dream but also causes great harm to herself as she is consumed by her desire for revenge. Number 3. Lucifer. Lucifer might seem like a fun-loving sort. I mean, Lucy does retire from hell to open up Lux with Mazikeen, but in reality Lucifer is still a deadly enemy and not someone that you want to cross. And they enjoy tormenting Dream and even threaten the Dream King's life as well, which makes them probably one of the greatest villains in the story, just in terms of the threats they're throwing out there. Though really, Dream and Lucifer do have a complex relationship, sometimes sworn enemies and sometimes presented as friends. They're really, I guess, more frenemies if we had to categorize them. And to be fair to Lucifer, like many other villains we've discussed here, they're really complex as a character. Lucifer didn't necessarily even want to become the ruler of hell, it was simply the punishment that they received for rebelling against the kingdom of heaven. All in all, Lucifer isn't necessarily a baddie on paper, it's just a role that they are often forced into playing and that they play well due to how selfish and somewhat narcissistic Lucifer usually is portrayed as being. Number 2. The Kindly Ones. The Kindly Ones are a different version of the Three Sisters, or Three Fates. We see these three women in the Sandman series at one point where they allude to their role as the Kindly Ones, one different incarnation of them, when talking to Rose Walker in the Doll's House episode. The Kindly Ones are an incarnation of the 3-in-1, who are in reality actually one entity that simply appear as three separate beings, who get revenge on those who spill family blood. That's the Kindly Ones' role when these three women are that. Basically, if you have caused harm to a sibling, a parent, a child, and especially if you have ended their life or spilled their blood, the Kindly Ones can be called on to come for you. And as they said to Rose, you wouldn't want to meet them in their Kindly Ones form. No, you would not. Number 1. Dr. Destiny. Dr. D, or John D, is probably the greatest villain for me in the original Sandman series. While not as powerful or narrative altering as the Kindly Ones or Lucifer, D is disturbing, awful, and creepy, and what makes this villain even worse is he truly believes his actions are justified. In fact, he's even more horrifying, I would argue, in the live action series in regards to his motives, because you can better understand why he is doing what he is doing and how he truly thinks he is saving the world. At least in the comics, he seems to be more interested in just seeing the world burn than saving it. But in the live action series, Dee actually believes that in order to save the world, he basically may have to burn it to the ground. As he sees it, that is really a reflection of the people on the planet and their true selves than a result of him doing anything wrong. Who are some of your favorite villains from the Sandman universe? Which one would you least like to run into and why? Are you afraid of the major arcana or the nightmares? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. I'll see you next time, but until then, you stay nerdy, YouTube.